Sex work is inherently work. It's how people feed their families, it's how people put clothes on their backs, it's how people survive. And I think for people to know that their means of survival is valued by society would only empower folks. I mean, I've been a sex worker, I've been a lawyer, I've served sandwiches at Subway, I folded clothes at Abercrombie. All those are work. I moved to New York for law school, and I just had no idea about how expensive New York was. I paid $300 a month for a room in Iowa, and I moved to New York and realized that was just, my savings meant nothing here. So I was a go-go dancer for about a year and a half, pretty regularly, and then on and off for the next 2 to 3 years in living in New York. Really, sex work, it allowed me to to really go to law school. It allowed me to be able to afford books. It allowed me to be able to graduate without having a tremendous amount of debt, so that going into public interest without really having family income, it made it a financial reality for me. One of the biggest offenses that I see people arrested for is Penal Law 240-37, lording for the purpose of prostitution. These are oftentimes people that aren't even engaged in prostitution. They're just women, oftentimes women of color, far too often transgender women or non-binary folks, and they're just existing. They're waiting for a bus, they're smoking a cigarette. These folks are picked up, they're arrested, they're booked, which can be incredibly humiliating, and then you see them in arraignment and you tell them what they were actually arrested for, and the offense has prostitution attached to it. And this person is so surprised.
Because of criminalization, I worry about being profiled as soon as I walk out the door for the loitering for the purpose of the prostitution statute.
People do sex work for a lot of different reasons. A lot of LGBTQ youth do it for a mixture of between survival, which is part of it, which is what was part of it for me as well. But it's also really just for liberation, which was also a large part of why I did sex work. You look at someone who's queer or trans, and their entire life, they're told that their queerness or their transness is something to be ashamed of. And they can take that, and they can take back that agency, and they can actually, profit from their sexuality. That's in many ways really liberating for people. It is impossible to decriminalize a person selling sex without also decriminalizing the person that's purchasing sex. When you go after the purchaser, oftentimes police indirectly, or even directly, quite frankly, also go after the seller.
As somebody who survived trafficking, the apartment where I was being trafficked was raided for drugs, and I was arrested. And because I knew that criminalization of sex work would add an extra charge to the drug charge, I did not disclose that I was being trafficked at the time. So I believe that decriminalization would help police officers and law enforcement to identify victims of trafficking.
I think it will let people know that they're seen. It will let people know that society doesn't view the way that they support themselves as any less meaningful or as any less valid than anyone else.